Welcome to a new update, and today we're going to cover a roundup of the markets as the dollar is increasing quite heavily. The indices are dropping down, yields are also running up, and we see that Bitcoin is stabilizing and crypto as a whole, while XRP is doing really well. So we're going to make a roundup of what the markets are doing right now, including the news that we had in the past week. So it's a little bit of what we have been doing in the live stream yesterday, but it covers all the topics that you must know if you're trading in the markets. But before we can continue, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit that like button if you enjoy the content. Make sure to be there on Monday and Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Central European time when we are live streaming, and also make sure to check out our trade letter and premium membership, which both can be tested for 1 week for free. It includes all my trades. The trade letter has altcoin setups, the premium membership has my trades and more trade IDs. Definitely check it out. So when we're looking at the markets, we see Bitcoin stabilizing at this point while the dollar keeps on running. We also saw that weaker currencies, or currencies that are showing weakness, are currently making measurements to fight the strong dollar that they have. So we are getting into a territory where the dollar is getting towards the end of the run. And that's what we're going to cover when we are diving into the charts. So let's move towards them. So when we're looking at the price action, the first thing we have to do is that we're looking at the Bitcoin USD chart and that we're looking at the DXY, right? So those two are the important triggers that we're looking at. And we can see that a correlation of a strong US dollar is not working great for Bitcoin. So in the previous history, if we can see it here, we see that there was a period of a strong US dollar from, let's say 2014 until 2015, which was this parabolic run on a DXY, resulting into a period of sideways action on the dollar, which we can also see now, in which we are seeing a parabolic run on the DXY, resulting into weakness on the Bitcoin chart, as we are seeing that we're down 75%. So now the question becomes if this is actually a valuable moment to start jumping into Bitcoin, and whether it is good to start selling your dollars. Well, if we're looking at the broader perspective, we can see that the economic numbers are getting worse and worse and worse, which is the first trigger to actually start investigating into other assets than the currency itself. Why? Well, we see that the PMI data is getting worse, and today US data is coming in after the video, so we don't know for sure, but at least Europe is getting worse. Then the factory orders are getting worse too, and we see unemployment going up, and the inflation remains to be high, but inflation is going to drop in next year. Then, based on that fact, on the inflation, the Fed has been hiking quite severely, and in the last FOMC meeting they hiked by another 75 bips, resulting into a giant move on the markets again. Especially the dollar is showing more and more strength. But when we look at the Fed and the FOMC, he announced that we are going to get a final run of the hikes towards 4.4% this year, and he expects it to be 4.6 next year. So we are getting to the last part of this policy. While on the other hand, euro is just starting up the actual policy, and other currencies, and today we saw, yesterday we saw some news coming out from Japan. They are doing measurements to actually fight the strong US dollar and a weak currency they have. So right now we start seeing the first switches towards having a little bit more weaker dollar and stronger other currencies, which would result into the dollar going down. So that is the first thing that we should be investigating here. And then the conclusion becomes, is it a wise thing or is it risky to keep on staying in the US dollar, or might there be more upside of being in other assets? Now, if we start looking back to the one in 2015, we've had a huge capitulation of Bitcoin taking place while the dollar was starting to show strength. Right now we do see the exact same, and Bitcoin has been dropping all the way towards 17.5k, right? So we've dropped to 17.5k on the markets, resulting into a capitulation. And what we see in 2015 is that we went sideways since. Now, the period of consolidation on the dollar and the actual peak high was during that bear market. Right now, we can also conclude that the peak high of the dollar is getting close, and that we're just consolidating with the Bitcoin and the total market cap for crypto might be getting into a reclaim of the 200-week MA. So going back to the thesis, it might be reasonable to understand that if you're an investor and you're into the dollar, right now your risk is of staying in the asset might be severely, and there might be an opportunity to jump into another asset because the policies and the sentiment and the changes are going to happen on the crisis. And now all the crises are basically a macro or just context. It's all about data that you have. So if you hear stuff about energy crisis and inflation, it is actually context, and it might be behind us already. Markets are pricing in the future, not the past, but you are deciding based on the past. So that's the difference, and that's why you're losing. So now we are looking at the case of, okay, maybe in next 6 to 12 months, it might not be reasonable to stay in the dollar, and it might be reasonable to actually jump into Bitcoin. And then we look at the price action again, which says here that we're looking at sideways action. When the dollar started to top out, we are also seeing the exact same case right now when it comes to the price action here, and the parabolic run is most likely going to end off relatively fast on the dollar, especially if PMI and all the figures are coming in worse than expected. So if we look at the title of this video, this chart shows you all, if the dollar is bottoming out, it is a wise period to start jumping into the dollar. It is not wise to start jumping into Bitcoin. But if the Bitcoin chart is getting towards the peak high and the dollar is bottom out, then we know that you have to be in the dollar. But if the dollar starts to top out or gets parabolic, it is not the change or the moment to start jumping into the dollar because everyone says so. It is wise to start looking and understanding what the methodology is of the markets, resulting into investment plus EV decisions, which are different than what the mass is doing. That's why it is a good period to start accumulating your bags into crypto and start selling off your the dollars. Yes, of course, we can still have another 5% run on the dollar. Let's look at it. We still have some resistance levels coming up. But if we look at this chart, it is definitely going parabolic like crazy. Which means that if we look at 2015, we had an identical chart. And I'll just get the RSI back up so we can see what the chart is doing. What we can see here based on the weekly time frame with the RSI, we have to reverse quite soon to actually get the bearish divergence taking place here. But we've seen the exact same verticalness in 2015, resulting in that giant strength on the markets. So when we're looking at the markets, the resistance is kicking in quite soon on the DXY. We've got a level based here on 112 or 113. We've got one at 115. We've got governments already stepping in to reverse the policy to fight the strong US dollar. And we're already getting factory numbers which are worse. And then when we're looking at another important trigger, it is going to be the yields. And especially the 2-year yields is the first important one. This one, as the FOMC has stated, is the rates are going to be 4.4% projected for at the end of 2022, 4.6 for next year, and then probably lower after. So right now the 2 years is getting towards a basket of those returns, which is already 4.25%. It is getting towards the peak high. We might be going a little bit more towards 4.3, 4.4, but that should be it. And if we get there, that is probably the trigger that we're going to reverse with the 2 years, as there's going to be worse economic data coming in, which is a trigger for the Fed to start reversing the policy, and that could be a fire for crypto to start waking up. That's the short update for today. We'll be covering way more on this later in the coming weeks on YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to hit like, and I'll see you again tomorrow for a fresh new update. Ciao!